Mirabai, I just wanted to, first of all, acknowledge how you have helped me when I took Unraveling the Mysteries of Grief with you online. When my husband died 10 years ago, I did not grieve his death. I numbed out and ended up in rehab. And when I took your course, a lot came out. And I really grieved. I wrote and I grieved and I cried. And I wrote and I grieved and I cried. And my brother died 4 months ago. And reading Ordinary Mysticism and the writing prompts at the end of that book is helping me grieve his death. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. But my question for you is, you've written about so many saints and mystics. I mean, John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, Julian of Norwich, and St. Francis. Do you fall in love with each one and spend time with them and kind of immerse yourself in their world? And do you have a favorite? Tough question.
I think you know the answer to part A, because the way you phrased it is perfect. Falling in love with each one, yes, yes, yes. I don't do this for the, I can't think of how I want to phrase that, but I do it out of pure selfishness of getting to hang out with these incredible wisdom keepers and lovers of God. And I don't have a favorite, but I do have in Wild Mercy, I talk about Teresa of Avila as my matron saint and my favorite ancestor. It feels like she's part of a team. She's like the queen of the team of my ancestors that include saints and mystics from across the spiritual traditions, that include my grandmothers, that include my daughter who became my ancestor when she died, and all that sort of circle of wisdom beings that I turn to for guidance when I need it, which is kind of constantly. And there's something about Teresa that she just always seems to have the right medicine for the moment. Thank you for your question. Oh, there we go.
My question, it's something I'm deeply kind of thinking about a lot lately, is the relationship to practice. And, as you were talking about everyday mysticism and everyday ordinary, life. And so I'd love for you to maybe reflect on that with us.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Colette. Yes, if you flip through the book, you'll see that there's a practice at the end of each chapter. And many of these practices that I share are conventional, traditional spiritual practices from across the spectrum of the world's religions, but kind of reclaimed and reframed, especially for the rebellious types among us who don't want to do it the old way. But I do draw on many traditional practices from the world's wisdom ways, the contemplative practices, especially meditation practices, guided and simple kind of mindfulness practices, chanting, mantra practice. And so I practice every day. My husband, who's older than I am and started on his spiritual path like I did very young. He was in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and when he came back, he went to India, like so many Vietnam vets. Anybody else in here went to Vietnam and then India? It wasn't like that uncommon. And so he went to India and then lived in ashrams for the next 10 years or something. And then we met in an ashram. We raised our children in a spiritual community. And by the time he was, say, 50, I would say, he was like, just done, with practice. He didn't talk about it. He just didn't do yoga and meditation, all the things anymore that he used to do, and chanting, prayer. He doesn't make a big deal about anything, but it just kind of faded away for him. And he makes fun of it in a really wonderful way. He makes fun of spiritual practice. I, on the other hand, Still practice as if my hair were on fire. Every morning. I mean, my daughter, the first thing she ever wrote was a little note to me, completely phonetic English. It took me a minute to decipher it. But it said, "Mommy, wake me up after your practices." That'll give you a sense of what the priority was in our household, and still is. And every morning, so I do my yogasanas, I meditate, I read, I do Lectio Divina, some kind of sacred reading practice. It's mostly shifted over to political poetry, it has become my sacred scripture, but sometimes I go back to, the Gnostic Gospels or other things. So I need practice. I need the container of spiritual practice, which I know is limited, and my attachment to it is an attachment. And yet I acknowledge that my days are different when I do engage in practices, prayer, meditation, and when I don't. And walking in nature is also a primary spiritual practice for me. For some people, it's dance, music. So I am deconstructing religiosity in many ways in this book, in my own life. And because I have a public voice, I'm doing it publicly. Doesn't mean it's right, but it is something I'm sharing. So I heard someone say, you write something and then it's published, and it's like, wait, I changed my mind. Too late. Everybody thinks that's what you think. But I am dismantling and deconstructing certain elements of organized, institutionalized religion, but I am not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And spiritual practice is one of the primary treasures that I am attempting to safeguard as we go forward into a world that is more spiritual than religious. It's not just me, obviously. Many of you probably identify as spiritual but not religious, or in many cases, spiritual and religious. So that was kind of a long-winded answer to your question. Is that helpful?